Hey guys, this is Jordy the Procrastinator, and I'm back with some good news. Just saw the Obi Wan Kenobi Part 1 and Part 2 episodes, and I wanted to do a little review on my thoughts about the two episodes that came out, and actually a little theory that I had going. This theory is something that I wanted to put out before I watched the episodes, but thankfully they haven't been, it hasn't been debunked yet. I figured I'd include that after a quick little review. I'll do spoiler-free, a couple spoilers without diving too deeply into it, and then I'll give you my theory at the end. So as someone who grew up watching the Star Wars prequels, I was super excited when I heard the show was coming out. I love the actors, you know, Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor. These are two people that had a huge impact on me as I grew up because one of my defining memories as a 9-year-old was going to see Revenge of the Sith when it came out in movie theaters. And I just remember the cultural impact that had, tying up the prequel series and officially connecting Star Wars prequels to the original trilogy, which is something that fans have been waiting for a long time. And I think at that point they were even gaining a little bit of a following, as much hate as they did get. I think most fans can agree that Episode 3 is one of their favorite of the prequels. I think that's when George Lucas finally got all the wrinkles ironed out, kind of figured out where he was headed, obviously had a strong vision connecting that to the original trilogy. So definitely this continuation, another bridging of those two time eras is really exciting, and I think that's why a lot of people are really looking forward to seeing what happens in the rest of the show. My thoughts right off the bat from the first two episodes were that very strong first two episodes. Obviously, some really huge pluses were Ewan McGregor's acting. He has phenomenal acting chops. Lots of emotion on display. Obviously, he's gone through a lot of stuff and has a lot of baggage, and rightfully so. He's kind of become this grumpy, curmudgeon character, and I think that's something we saw. Funny enough, that's something we saw in The Last Jedi with Luke.
Leave this island now!
Which is actually a twist that I kind of found to be interesting to explore that. Hopefully, most fans find this interpretation to be better than The Last Jedi, because The Last Jedi got, unfortunately, a lot of hate. I don't think it was all super deserved.
Turn it off! Turn off your phone! Turn off the flash, you fucking moron!
But anyways, these two episodes look like they're going in a good direction. We're already seeing Obi-Wan starting to turn the corner, starting to open up a little bit. I think that's the nice thing about having two episodes, is that we get to kind of get into the story and just see where it's headed and what the direction of the plot is. Some more pluses with the show, I think, in my opinion, are kind of the pace it's taking so far. It definitely feels kind of meandering, but I think that's a good thing. I think it's really been nice to see Obi-Wan on this adventure, how he reacts to things, where he's at this point in his life. I think Deborah Chow, the director, even said that this is more of a focus on him as a character, and it's a character study about his progression. So as these things kind of happen to him throughout the story, we get to see how that affects him and eventually gets him to the Alec Guinness character that we all know and love from the original trilogies, that wise, kind of compassionate older man, and from the betrayed and broken Ewan McGregor in the end of Revenge of the Sith. And something that I found negative, you know, I don't have a lot so far. I think that so far the dialogue's pretty strong, the acting is superb, it's really great. The action seems a little bit, I don't know if it's just Ewan McGregor's fighting style. It looks like they're going for this almost like martial arts style that he has, where he will kind of deflect blows and use the weight of his opponent against them. And I think that's kind of like some techniques you see in judo or jiu-jitsu or even tai chi. These are some pretty interesting martial arts to have Obi Wan Kenobi adopt. But I can see why they went for something like that. However, on the camera, it does look a little bit goofy. Certain points, there's a certain hallway scene where he's fighting two criminals, and it just didn't really flow or jive the way that I thought it was going to. And it seems like they're really adopting kind of this John Wick approach, which is that he's, you know, bare fists, guns, blasters. Obviously, he can't use his lightsaber because that would kind of expose him. and take him out of hiding, which is the whole thing that he needs to be doing at this point in his life. So I can see why they're leaning into that, and it'll be great to see maybe how that affects his fighting style throughout the rest of the show as he eventually and inevitably does use the lightsaber. So maybe it'll give him a leg up. Who knows?
Leave us alone.
When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father?
So this is your spoiler alert, because I'm going to go into a little bit of spoilers from the first 2 episodes. Now that you've been warned, I think one of the biggest spoilers is the inclusion of a character that a lot of people had expected or suspected. I hadn't thought about it, to be honest, which is funny because I think there is so much focus on Obi-Wan, Anakin, Darth Vader, and Luke, but the inclusion of Princess Leia as a kid is something that I found to be kind of refreshing, and I could see a lot of people having an issue with this because anytime you bring these iconic characters in, give them more backstory, more context, there's going to be someone who had their own headcanon that's going to disagree with what's on the screen. But something about the very endearing and charming way that they're handling the character, it reminds me of another Star Wars property that I grew up with, was the Ewok story. And I forget the exact name of it. It was a 2-part. We had the DVD, and we rewatched that thing way too many times for what it was worth because production quality was awful. It really had little to do with Star Wars, but there was this charm of the main character, which was this young girl, very similar to the age of Princess Leia's actor in the show, that as she went on these adventures and handled things on her own as a child would, there was a certain strength and inspiration in that. I think as a kid, that's something that you put yourself into, and you put yourselves in the shoes of that character because they're around the same age as you, and it's harder to relate to some of these older adult characters, obviously. So I think the inclusion of this character is really smart on Disney's part, because it's going to bring a lot of younger people into the fold. It's going to make a lot of younger people empathize with Princess Leia as a character, and I think it can only do her justice, and the memory of her justice. So I'm really looking forward to see how that affects Obi-Wan. And if there's one thing that we've learned in Star Wars, if there's a hardened hero or even a villain, the ultimate way to soften that heart is to bring a cute character, Grogu and Mando being the main one we saw recently, into the fold. So I can see what they're going for here, and I think that it's going to be different enough that it'll give the show a lot of benefit. And with the inclusion of Leia, something that was really exciting that I think a lot of fans had wanted to see was Alderaan, and expanding on what Alderaan looks like. And from a visual standpoint, you get a lot of visual cues from the very first ship we see in Star Wars, that Princess Leia is on when Darth Vader captures her, how all the walls on that ship are white and pristine, and this is something that was in the end of episode 3 as well, with Leia's father, Bail Organa, and you definitely see that reflected in Alderaan in the show. It's the same kind of vibe, and then everything is just lush and green and beautiful, and there's waterfalls, and so ultimately it's been really a beautiful planet to explore, and it makes, I think, the fall of Alderaan even more devastating, because we know that that is not something that's going to be around forever, at least in this canon. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the huge cliffhanger at the end of the second episode that I think basically sold the show for a lot of fans, including myself, which was when Obi-Wan learns that Anakin Skywalker is still alive and is Darth Vader, one of the mass criminal warlords, basically, that's taking over the universe and hunting Jedi that Obi-Wan has been hiding from. Just in that scene and in that moment, you get so much from Ewan McGregor's portrayal. It's a silent scene. He's hiding, but you still see the pain and shock in his eyes. And that's something that continues into the scene when he boards the ship as they're escaping with Leia. And they do this amazing cutaway, basically from the eyes of Obi-Wan to the eyes of Darth Vader in a Bacta tank. It makes sense, obviously, and it's something that I think gives more humanity to Darth Vader, because we get to see his eyes and the expression of his eyes, and we couldn't see his mouth. Obviously, he needs the breathing apparatus, and I wonder if they'll eventually in the show, I'm hoping that they'll show him in his kind of sphere, where he can breathe without an apparatus, so we get to see Hayden Christensen's whole face. I think that'll really do a lot for the character and make fans super happy to see him on screen. Something that would be important to remember is with the inclusion of Leia as a character, we have to remember that there's an actress behind, a young actress behind this Leia character, and I think something that unfortunately happened with the prequels with young Anakin Skywalker, played by Jake Lloyd, was that he, as a young kid, received a lot of bullying, a lot of negativity that affected him and his personal life, and I think that we need to remember, as much as we may have disagreements with how they handled this part of the lore and the show, we have to definitely just admire the fact that this young actress is putting her all into the role, and I think that's something that we can definitely see, because she's definitely shining bright even amongst huge actors like Ewan McGregor. So today I wanted to talk about a theory that actually still kind of, we'll have to see if it plays out or not, behind mainly the inclusion of Vader, Darth Vader in the series, and a line that he had in A New Hope.
The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
And this has been kind of one of those lines that, George Lucas included in the original series. He didn't know that we'd be coming this far full circle, doing the prequels, in fact, there's only one movie planned at that time. There wasn't even a sequel planned. So to really scrutinize this line, I guess, is in a way it's not something that should be law, but I think it's something that the directors and the producers have taken time to hopefully address in a way that's meaningful, because that's a meaningful line to a lot of people that understand the relationship between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. And I think for George Lucas, that line implied that when Obi-Wan last saw Anakin on Mustafar, obviously Anakin was still a learner. Obi-Wan was the master in that relationship, and that's why he kind of had a leg up on him when he sees him again in A New Hope. This was his chance to basically best Obi-Wan after taking time to sharpen his skill and kind of hone into the dark side. However, I think that this line can be dissected a little bit and addressed in a different way. So you can argue that on the Battle of Mustafar, Anakin was very powerful, but he was still a learner. He had a lot of stuff. Obviously, he wasn't. The Jedi Council did not approve his spot on as a master, and definitely he had a lot of raw strength that needed to be tamed and basically honed a little bit. But one of the key things about that being what the line is referencing is that Obi-Wan leaves Anakin in that moment. Anakin obviously did not leave Obi-Wan. Anakin didn't even have legs in that moment. He couldn't go anywhere. He had to be taken away by Palpatine and basically transformed into Darth Vader. So I think this is where this new show kind of brings more validity of that line, because there's an opportunity to make this situation more correct with the phrasing and whatnot. So that leads us to the question: now that Darth Vader, he has a suit, he is a Sith. How does that make him a learner when he meets Obi-Wan? This is basically something that I think would be really exciting to explore, is Darth Vader as a learner. Darth Vader has been Darth Vader for 10 years at this point. However, in the grand scheme of his life, that's not that long, and there's a possibility that he is still getting used to being, in all that cybernetic gear, his arms, his legs, not being in tune with the Force directly, him having to get used to, things as simple as walking maybe took a couple years in the beginning. Now Darth Vader might just be getting to the point where he can use a lightsaber again and he can actually be in combat again. And, it's one thing to be taking down rebels and any other common folk, but when it comes to Jedi, people that are trained with the Force, you know, he may still feel kind of unconfident going against them. And I think that's where these new Inquisitor characters come in a strong way, is that he has these Jedi turned Inquisitors who are strong in the Force, who still have, you know, their appendages and whatnot. And they're able to hunt the Jedi and are somewhat disposable. So Vader can still focus on his new rule in the Empire under Emperor Palpatine. And I think we hear something that kind of confirms that this may be the case, is that Darth Vader's armor in his body caused him a lot of pain, and that pain is something he uses to fuel his anger. As a member of the Sith, this is something that they basically, it's part of their doctrine. And I think what is going to be exciting is that maybe this pain is unbearable at this point for Anakin. This is something that is severely interfering with his ability to rule. Maybe so much so to the point that he's had trouble locating Obi-Wan. And maybe even Emperor Palpatine is noticing. And maybe Emperor Palpatine is threatening that if he doesn't get his act together and he doesn't really step up to the plate and eliminate Obi-Wan, that, you know, he might find someone who's stronger and better capable, which, you know, when it comes to Sith, they do a lot of, you know, fear tactics and bluffing, so that might just be part of his master plan, is to get Darth Vader all riled up and Darth Vader to basically be more fueled by that anger and that hatred of Obi-Wan, to help strengthen him in a way that the Emperor will be more pleased with. So with this theory in mind, I think the culmination of the show is going to lead up, obviously, to some kind of confrontation between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. And I think this is the point where we're going to see, you know, this clumsiness or this weakness really exposed, because Darth Vader will see his chance to seize Obi-Wan before he is fully in tune with his self, and he's still learning his abilities and his limitations. But maybe he gets caught up in his anger and his rage, and he goes full force, you know, no pun intended, at Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan, who is more wise and more reserved, something we saw in Rebels when he fought Darth Maul. He controls his lightsaber moves eloquently, gracefully, and almost as an art form. And I think that's where he'll basically still have an advantage against Darth Vader. He might even say something cheeky like, "You still have much to learn." Darth Vader definitely hones his skills, because we've seen in Rogue One how much damage he can inflict when he's at his full height of his power. That badass scene of him in the hallway just mowing down rebels with his lightsaber, using the Force, and basically I think that's the point where he realizes, okay, he's strong enough to go up against his old master Obi-Wan in A New Hope. And that's why he does confront him again, and he has that confidence to say the famous line that I've been mentioning. Hopefully you guys found some interesting points in my theory here. I think it could make for a really emotional scene, as Darth Vader has to retreat and run away once again from Obi-Wan, because he still is not strong enough to beat him. And it could make for a really jarring scene. But I think this might just be the cherry on top moment for me if they do this. I'm not super attached to this outcome, but I think this would be really cool if I was writing it. It would be that Obi-Wan, in this confrontation where Darth Vader has to retreat and run away, maybe he sees how broken Darth Vader is, how Anakin has been kind of still fully destroyed by what happened on Mustafar. And I think that guilt is going to really weigh heavily on Obi-Wan, and he's going to see this as his chance for redemption. He's going to offer Anakin a chance to come back to the light side, and basically join him again as his brother. And I think this could be a really powerful moment, because obviously Darth Vader won't accept, but we might see some hesitation in Vader. I think if, you know, his helmet gets cracked open in their duel, we can maybe see some more of that iconic eyebrow movement, you know, because we're very limited with what we can do in the Darth Vader helmet, but something just signaling that Darth Vader still has feelings and still has love for Obi-Wan that he's fighting to overcome. So that's all I got for you guys today. Looking forward to episode 3 coming out this Friday, and I will maybe do some more reviews of the episodes as they come out, and maybe some reactions if you guys are interested in that kind of thing. Definitely stay tuned for more Star Wars content. Let me know what you think of my theory in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to take some time to procrastinate today, because you deserve it. Talk soon.